Hello and a very warm welcome to all of you on the penultimate day of Tata Literature Live 2020, the 11th annual Mumbai International Literature Festival, and the first one to be completely digital. Huge thank you to our title sponsor Tata and our co-sponsors Tata Steel and Tata Projects. This session is presented by Kotak. How amazing these last few days have been. We've had some terrific sessions, and even though the festival is virtual, but the books are real. We've also got some super sessions lined up ahead over the next 2 days, so do remember to log into our website tatalitlive.in and earmark your favorite sessions so you don't miss any of them. Welcome to a very, very special session this afternoon. Unity in Diversity, how LGBTQ inclusion is good for business. I think it was Tim Cook who said that you can focus on things that are barriers, or you can focus on scaling the wall or redefining the problem. Now, the rule books and HR codes are being rewritten to remove long-standing workplace discriminations and to welcome more LGBTQI employees into workspaces. But changes in the manual do not overnight erase long-standing prejudice, often subtly inflicted. What more should companies do and how? Helping us understand how to scale that wall Tim Cook spoke about today is our esteemed panel. Joining us first is Anubhuti Banerjee, who is Manager Analytics at Tata Steel, leading applications of managing machine learning for marketing and sales. In 2018, she founded and now leads Wings, the LGBTQ+ employee network at Tata Steel, pioneering in the Tata Group and Indian manufacturing industry, and led the implementation of the LGBTQ+ policy at Tata Steel. She's always learning and sharing, as she says, her Anubhuti of what it means to be a self-made woman of steel. Welcome, Anubhuti, to our panel this afternoon. Our next panelist is Pankajam Sridevi, who is the Managing Director of the Commonwealth Bank of Australia in India. She has over 33 years of experience in diverse segments ranging from manufacturing to technology to banking domains. Pankajam is the winner of many awards and is passionate about building a learning and innovative organization through continual improvement and transformation where employees build their careers. Welcome, Pankajam, to our panel this afternoon. Our chair today is the ubiquitous Parmesh Shahani. Parmesh is Vice President at Godrej Industries Limited. He is a passionate advocate for LGBTQI inclusion in corporate India and has guided many of the country's leading companies on their inclusion journeys. He's written many books espousing the cause of the LGBTQI inclusion in the Indian workspace. He has been a TED Senior Fellow, a Yale World Fellow, and a World Economic Forum Young Global Leader. Welcome, Parmesh, and thank you so much for chairing our panel this afternoon. Also remember that all of you viewing our sessions today can also be an important part of the session. Remember to send us your questions right through the conversation that takes place. Now, you can do that through your chat boxes or the comment panels on the platform that you're watching. So keep those questions coming in right through the conversation, especially with your names. So let's start off this afternoon with Unity in Diversity, how LGBTQ inclusion is good for business. Over to you, Parmesh.
Thank you so much, Meher, and I'm so happy to be here. Thank you to the entire Tata Lit Life team for pivoting so beautifully during these challenging times. Anil, Shashi, the entire team, I know you all have been working so hard behind the scenes to make this happen. So very grateful. We've had some great sessions, and I think this is going to be one of the very good sessions this year as well, because we have two incredible people in the session, both of whom have been featured in my book, Queeristan, which is here. So just some very subtle product placement because, why not? One of them is a beneficiary of inclusion, and Anubhuti, and another, Pankajam, is someone who is a straight ally who has become a big champion of inclusion. So we have a queer person as well as a straight ally, and we have me, kind of trying to take this conversation ahead. So before I begin, I just want to acknowledge Trans Day of Remembrance, which was yesterday, and also happy birthday, Anubhuti. We're so happy that you've chosen to spend your birthday weekend with us, with Queeristan, and with Tata Lit Live. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to, over the next about half an hour or so, both me as well as Anubhuti and Pankajam are all going to share just some opening thoughts with you. I will first summarize the key arguments of the book Queeristan in my 8 minutes. Although I'm going to do that, it's no excuse not to buy the book. You should really go buy the book because it's much more in detail and it's much more fun when you read the entire book. And then I'm going to ask Anubhuti and Pankajam to each use their 8 minutes to talk about their own powerful personal journeys over the years. And then I'm going to ask them a bunch of questions, and then we will open it up to everyone in the audience as well. So I hope you have a good session and, stay on for the sessions that follow as well as for tomorrow, right? So let me very quickly give you an overview of the book. The book is, so that you can see it closer. It came out in August, and it's called Queeristan LGBTQ Inclusion in the Indian Workplace. And I wrote it with, with 5 sections. Each section is kind of independent in itself, and it kind of builds to the others, right? I started with my own personal journey of what it means to be a gay person growing up, going to college, and my journey in the workplace, focusing a lot on Godrej where I work now, but also my previous companies as well. And I've described my own Godrej journey in great detail, talking about how we kind of started first by changing basic, policies, and discrimination policies, and then, partnership benefits, and then so on. And I've gone on through the years, in changing policies and practices to take the company on a journey of inclusion. And often it is ignorance. And, through Godrej as well, I write about how when I asked the company, they just had no one had asked before, and it's not something that they had thought of. And here I tell everyone who's a change agent, speak up. If you're queer, if you're a straight ally, only if you speak up, only if you ask, you might realize that actually there isn't resistance, but there is ignorance. So ignorance we can dispel, right? Then I, in part 2 of the book, I contextualize what it means being queer. I talk about multiple histories of queerness in India. I talk about the law. I talk about various other things, including this wonderful chapter called "It's All About Loving Your Children," which is kind of a reversal of the Karan Johar tagline, which was "It's all about loving your parents," in which I talk about how important the idea of family is to us queer people. And both the first section as well as the second section kind of set up the book for the remaining parts, right? Because part 3 of the book outlines a business case for inclusion, where we talk about how being inclusive makes you money. It makes you more innovative. It helps you attract the best talent. It really improves your reputation amongst millennials, Gen Z, employees, customers, and so on. And so I argue in this section that whichever way you look at it, being inclusive makes sense. In fact, there is no compelling reason not to be inclusive. And then in the next part of the book, I actually take these arguments and say, here are the steps that any organization can take. And it's, a 6-step approach. All the policies that need to be changed, we talk about that. All the processes that need to be done, we talk about that. And with examples, with case studies, by meeting individuals like Anubhuti, Pankajam, and others in the book, we hear their stories as well. And we recognize that all this change is already happening in India as well. And then finally, we move towards the end of the book, which is extremely exuberant and optimistic, in which I look at the changes that are taking place all around us, whether in films, whether in books, whether in politics, whether in so many states in the country which are being LGBTQ affirmative, multiple changes taking place with the law, schools and colleges, families, and all the multiple intersectional young queer movements that are happening. So the book is many things. It's a diary, it's a business book, it's got queer movies, TikTok, job fairs, my love life. It's not an art film, it's a full-on Bollywood masala film. And this way of writing itself, which is why I'm so excited to be talking about it at a literature festival, is a form of queering itself, because I wanted to queer the idea of how a business book is written. And I'm so grateful that the Tata Lit Live Festival folks honored it by shortlisting it for Business Book of the Year. And I think that was very important, and I felt very, very happy that this idea of, queering the writing itself, reimagining what a business book can be, that gave me great pleasure. I think it's especially useful now, post 2018, because, in a post, in an India in which this 3-7 judgment has gone, but there is still so much inequality, a lot of work needs to be done. So I think it's useful if people use this book as a manual and as something that can inspire them with the stories inside. And recognize that, being LGBTQ is very much a part of our culture in our homes as well as in our workplaces. And I really wanted it to be a book that speaks to everyone. So if you are queer and reading this book, I want the readers to feel that you are not alone. There's an entire ecosystem that is being built. And if you are an ally, like Pankajam on this panel, you need to stand up and speak up for queer people, and recognize that the struggle for queer rights is connected with so many struggles in India and across the world, whether anti-caste movement, whether Black Lives Matter, whether feminism, whether the movement for environment, and so on, right? So how can we build bridges of solidarity and love? And so that's a very quick overview of the book. With that, if I can ask Anubhuti first, happy birthday again. If you want to talk about your own powerful journey over the years and share it with the audience. Anubhuti, over to you.
Thank you so much, Parmesh. Such a wonderful introduction to your book, in which I am also a part of. So I am so excited and so glad to be part of this session. To begin with, I wanted to start on a little bit of a different footing. I am not sharing a journey that is just of me. I am sharing a journey of the company that I work with. I work with Tata Steel as an analytics engineer, and I also lead the LGBT initiative at Tata Steel. Now, it's common knowledge that whenever steel is made, it starts from a raw material. The raw material, which is an iron ore, it never knows that one day it could be something as lustrous and shiny as steel. But probably somewhere deep inside the ground, deep inside its heart, it does know that. But in order to get to that stage, in order to be that strong, lustrous steel that we know of, it has to go through the hottest of fires and the strongest of quality checks. And only then is it considered a lustrous and beautiful product that we call a steel. Just as that process exists in Tata Steel, such has been my own journey. Starting from a nondescript town, knowing that being assigned male at birth, there was something wrong about me, and there was something that needed to change. However, I did not know how I would do that, and how the world can see me as who I really am. So I decided that the whole idea of me becoming the person I am, me becoming the gender that I really believe in, would be a process that would take a lot of hardships, but then I was ready for it. And that's why in my introduction you must have heard that it's a self-made woman of steel. Somewhere around my teenage years, I decided that I had to be the self-made woman. The of steel came when I joined Tata Steel, and trusting completely on the processes that were available in the company, I was very confident that I would be accepted as myself. I would be able to become the person I am today, to transition into the gender that I really was born into and was always wanted to be in. However, as quite often happens in stories, there was a little bit of an issue. I realized that in my workplace and also in many other workplaces around India, there was a huge gap. We were not talking about LGBT things. We were not just only not talking about it, we were actually, or not just we, it is everyone was talking about jokes about LGBT people, about, or plain ignorance about most of LGBT people. Being in that situation, I thought for a moment that maybe workplaces in India wouldn't be a right place for me. I thought maybe I'd find better luck offshore, or maybe I could try something else, something outside corporate India, something outside a sort of job that does not really require me to be in such a position. But being the person I was and being given the sort of responsibilities that I had in Tata Steel in a very high performing position, I decided that there was need for a change. That is when I started talking about LGBT inclusion in my organization. Now, when I started speaking about LGBT inclusion in my organization, that's when the change started to happen. That's when I started to find that although it might not be that everyone knows about LGBT issues, it might not be that everyone can appreciate them, but slowly you do find allies, you do find people who begin to see yourself as you see yourself, or as I wanted to be seen. As this number grew, I found more and more confidence in this journey, and I knew that this journey was going to be something that would have a very big impact on my life, not only in my personal life, in which I would finally get to be the person I am, but also for the organization itself. Because I always say that transition doesn't happen just for a person. Transition happens for the entire ecosystem, for the entire company. Happens only when all of them transition with you. A very big fillip that I found in this journey was getting to know a lot of people like Parmesh who are out there in other companies, in other organizations, and all of them were working, trying to make changes in their LGBTQ, trying to make their workplaces more LGBTQ friendly, but it was not really happening when you are one. But when I started finding these networks, when I started finding these connections from all different places, when I started finding queer people all around India, moving and trying in their ways to make changes at whatever places they were, I was so given so much confidence. And that's when the journey really took wheels. I started something called Wings, which is the LGBT resource group at Tata Steel. I made a lot of changes in the Tata Steel policy, which make sure that trans people can get gender reassignment surgery benefits, that LGBTQ people can have partners of any gender and they're celebrated just as much as partners of a straight gender. And once these changes started happening, not just in my organization, I started seeing a change in a much larger perspective, in which what we would call the whole ecosystem of the industry. One of the most happiest moments in my life, one of the most what justifies my journey, what makes me so happy, is that when JRD Tata's on JRD Tata's 117th birthday, when the Tata Experiential Center, which is at the Tata House in Mumbai, when it was being renovated, I was called up by the team and told that they wanted a few pictures of me. I wanted to know why, and that's when I got to know that when this fantastic state-of-the-art Tata Experiential Center was going to come up, which would showcase the whole history of Tata Steel, the whole impact of Tatas in general, and the whole impact that Tatas have had in the entire country, there would be a story of me. If you look in the Tata Experiential Center, which contains the oldest steel ingot that was made in India, there are pictures and stories of JRD Tata, Mahatma Gandhi. If you turn somewhere to the left on a people section, you would find my story. That for someone who has gone through such a struggle, who was so unsure of if they will ever be the person they wanted to be, that was vindication. That was vindication that I was in the right journey. I was doing what I was doing, and not only the company, the whole ecosystem was there with me and was supporting. That's probably also why I'm here today, and so glad to be speaking.
And once again, happy birthday once again. Pankajam, do you want to tell us about your journey of how you became, we consider you as part of our LGBT community itself, even though you're straight, but tell us about your journey of allyship and how you have become an LGBTQ champion over the years.
Okay, thank you. But Anubhuti, I must tell you that I've got so involved in your story that I'm almost forgetting the story that I wanted to tell. It is inspirational. Your story is inspirational. So I must tell you that, I'm in the corporate world for 35 years, but I think only in the last 15 years did I identify any other person other than a male or a female. I come from a very conservative family and an environment, so I thought there are two genders. You're born in those genders. One is male and the other is female. When I started working in Australian organizations and American organizations, I'm talking of 15 years ago, there was a lot of hush-hush talk about a person having a male partner and a female having a female partner. And I used to feel very embarrassed when anybody says that story. Even I was not even ready to hear because I thought it might be a rumor. I was that ignorant. So I thought it's a rumor, and I just tried to at least show that I'm not interested. I was feeling very shy about it. And then, one of the leaders in an organization, a parent organization, called me and said, here is a guy, I'm just giving a name. Here is a guy, Dean, he's excellent. Can he come and lead one of your groups? And I'm like, yeah, I saw him doing a lot of presentations and I really want to get him. He's fantastic. Is he ready to come to India? And my colleague said, yes, looks like he is ready to come to India. And then very secretively, he came to me and said, but Pankajam, he has a same-sex partner. And I couldn't believe my ears. And I could not even think of what I will do next. So she said, is it okay? I was kind of shattered, but I said, it's okay. But actually, I was not okay. And I went back to that leader and said, see, I'm okay, but the environment around me is not okay. So I was putting it on somebody else, to be honest, to say, environment is not okay. He will face a lot of, atrocities. People may not like him, come with his male partner for a party. I don't know how the team will recognize him as a leader. Unknowingly, I was showing all my biases, but I didn't know that at all. And I continued. I didn't know that I did a big mistake to a person who deserved a role in my organization and who was the best for the role. I didn't even realize that. After a period of time, I had another friend, very close friend, and he came to India and we were having dinner, and he and me, and he was sharing his family photos. I was sharing mine. I said, this is my husband, this is my son, this is my mother-in-law, this is my father-in-law. And as usual, like many people, he was joking, this is my enemy, you know who it is. So I realized it's his mother-in-law. And that's a bias, he was just joking. And then he showed me his father-in-law. Until then, everything was okay. And then he showed the picture of his partner. And that was the guy, I remember his name. And believe me, I was having dinner and I almost fell off the chair, This explanation I'm giving because I'm not the only leader who would have faced this, the bias we have in our mind, the lack of openness as a person, as a leader, just acknowledging our own experiences only, I was such a person. And this friend was very close to me, so I gathered myself and said, oh, that's your partner, fantastic. And then he told me, Pankajam, I'm so close to you, but I was just worried how you would take this position about me when I say that I'm a gay. And that really hit me like a bullet. He was very close to my heart, but he touched not only my heart, but he touched my mind. And I'm like, if there is one person who worries so much about getting acceptance from me, just because he has a different sexual orientation, I'm sure that in the group that I'm leading, around 7,000 to 8,000 people, there could be many people who are really closeted and who are not even ready to come and speak to me for the fear of getting exposed and for the fear of not knowing how I would react. Every human being has the right to be respected in their own rights. And I just felt miserable. This was around 14 years ago. And that's when I came in touch. I went to the HR head, I went to various people in the organization and said, I really want to know more about how to become an inclusive leader, how to accept LGBTI persons, how to really take them along with us. And that's when I was connected to Ram and Srini and all of them. And then, that time the Equal Marriage Act had not come in India. None of the leaders were really ready to stand up and say that they are alive. But I thought this is an opportunity for me to change the perception that I created. And perception is reality, So, I thought I must stand up. So I wore a purple sari. And when I walked out of my house, it was like, why are you wearing this dark color? And I'm like, this is the color I want to wear today, because I'm going to stand up and declare that this organization accepts people as they are. It's not about the sexual orientation. It's not about the caste. It's not about the color. It's not about the gender that matters. What matters is what you bring to the table, the respect you give others, the mindfulness you have with your team, the curiosity that you have in your job, the respect and the kindness and the commitment and the care that you show your people. And I must tell you, I stood up and said that. Even then, I didn't think that there will be so many gays and lesbians in my organization. Of course, transgender persons, mostly you will find out because they are different and you can find that out. So you can immediately show that respect. But gay persons and lesbians, and I'm like, what do I do, Srini? I really want to become their ally. And he said, have a session and tell them that they don't need to disclose themselves. And to my amazement, I really found that there were hundreds of people on the call talking to me, And then I felt that, I have to stand up. I have to stand up and say that, I'm an ally. And I had that poster in front of my office. Now I don't have an office. I'm sitting at home. But I'm very clear, even in the new organization that I'm building, there will be a big note saying that I'm an ally of LGBTI persons. And the advantage with that is that I've got a lot of friends who came up and spoke to me and they felt comforted. And I feel it's my duty as a leader. It's simply my duty. And it's no favor. It is no favor to the LGBTI persons. It's their right. I'm just helping them to get their right in the community. And that's how I became an ally. And I continue to be an ally. Over to you, Parmesh.
Thank you so much for this. Thank you really so much, Pankajam. Loved how you so honestly shared your story, about your biases earlier and how you overcame them and are now become such a champion. Anubhuti, I don't know if you had heard Pankajam speak earlier. So this is, I've been, a big fan of Pankajam for years now, and everyone who is watching this session can see why, right? And I think that's very important, right? So now you've heard from, a gay person, a trans person, a straight ally, and I hope that everyone who is seeing this live and who sees this later will recognize how important it is, to create these environments in which we all can be the best versions of ourselves, and how when organizations support us and when leaders support us, how everyone benefits, right? It's not just queer people that benefit, it's straight people that benefit as well. The entire organization benefits through diversity and inclusion. And there's enough data on this. A lot of it is in my book already, but just to give you some numbers for those who are watching, the Indian LGBTQ market size is about $200 billion. That's billion with a B. The cost of homophobia in India about 5 years ago by the World Bank was calculated to be $32 billion, which was about 1% of the GDP of the country that year. So, whether in terms of money, there's enough data that says that if you are an inclusive organization, your innovation output rises by about 8 times. So there's an 8x advantage. So whichever way you look at it, besides, of course, the very human ways that Anubhuti and Pankajam have just told you, but how it empowers you as a queer person and as a straight person as well, right? So I hope everyone who's watching, takes home this message that being inclusive is good, whichever way you look at it. Anubhuti and Pankajam, I have some questions for you. Before, we open up to the audience questions. And anyone who's watching, please, send in your audience questions because we want to take as many as we can. But first of all, just to start with, we are in 2020, 2021. We've had a lot of change over the years, right? Whether in courts from 2009, whether it's Delhi High Court decriminalizing, 2013 recriminalizing, this is with 377, NALSA judgment 2014, right to privacy 2017, 2018 377 going away, a very problematic Trans Act. So we've seen so much in terms of law, we've seen so much in terms of societal change in 2020, 21. Now companies and organizations have been doing this now for a while, right? And I think a lot of organizations, we have all these things in place. We have anti-discrimination, we have benefits, we have gender reassignment surgery, and so on. So all these things are there. But what do organizations have to do at this point to really take inclusion to the next level? Because I'm seeing that there is stuff that people are talking about, but how do we really push ahead right now? In your perspectives from where we are at this point in time. Anubhuti, do you want to go first and then maybe Pankajam?
Yeah, sure. Thanks so much, Parmesh, and this is a question that is so close to my heart. Being an LGBTQ person in a workplace, this is probably one of the things that I think most about, especially about workplace culture and how we can actually make workplaces that are not only LGBT inclusive, but are in some ways queer in themselves. Let me try and explain a little bit. Now, Parmesh, in his book, if you've read it, has this brilliant metric that he always says that a queer leader like Radhika Piramal was able to drive the shares of her company as soon as she came on board to a lot higher levels. Now, while this may be a metric that does not really explain the effect that LGBTQ people can have, but there is a very, very large effect that exists. Let me try and frame it this way. We are in 2020 and 2021. We live in queer times. I think no one will disagree with that. And when we live in queer times, we need queer leaders. And that's where I think that companies really now stand to benefit from queer leaders, from queer members of their workforce in ways that they were not envisaging when we were running these inclusion programs, or when the companies are more or less coming out and talking about inclusion, talking about putting rainbows on their logos. That was one part. But the part that has come right now, and it is a very exciting part, and this is where queer people can be extremely helpful and extremely drive the whole direction of organizations in a whole new level. If I can give you some examples, maybe I can make it feel better. Imagine that you are working in a digital company that works in, say, in my domain of analytics and machine learning, where we are creating algorithms which affect lots of people around the world. If there are biases in those algorithms, biases for the majority which leaves out LGBTQ people, we are inherently creating algorithms which are not good enough to cover the entire population that we have. Let me give another example. Again, in the digital space, something that most of us are now talking about, but something that the LGBTQ community has known for a very long time, is the importance of privacy. Now, while the internet has been a boon for LGBTQ people, because a lot of LGBTQ people and trans people have been able to find, find companionship, find support, find resources on the internet that helps them a lot. But then still, privacy is something that is absolutely inherently very, very precious for anyone who's LGBTQ. And this is about that now other people, now people who are not part of the LGBT community are suddenly realizing that we have many such digital organizations who know so much about us that could be, that could be information that we don't want to share with them, and they don't need to be shared. And this is where someone who is LGBTQ, a leader who is LGBTQ, will be able to drive it better. An example, Tim Cook was something that Parmesh mentioned. Apple, in many of its pitches, talks about privacy much stronger than a competitor like Google, and they have made provisions for that. In other, if I'm allowed to talk into other fields, in fashion, LGBTQ people have had a huge impact. One of the most inspirational figures I found in fashion, who is changing the way we see fashion, is Alok Vaid Menon. Alok is an activist for gender non-binary femme people of color, and these are the kind of identities who have not been represented in fashion, but these are the identities who we really belong to. So if the corporations are not following, if they are not able to understand that this is something that actually caters to their customer, actually makes their customer much more, much more at peace, much more confident about themselves, then we are missing out. We are trying to fit them into, clothes which don't actually fit. If I am to talk about in another domain, there will be things like mental health, in which the presence of LGBTQ people have pushed a lot about about the inherent patriarchy that a lot of people, a lot of men especially, face, and because of these toxic male or masculine roles, they have never understood the need for mental health. And because of the presence of LGBTQ identities, these are things that change. The reason why I went into all this is because that if we have LGBTQ people leading, making decisions for companies, then we can actually create organizations, we can create corporations which actually cater to what the customers need. And not only cater to what the customers need, this also brings about a paradigm shift in how the strategies of these organizations are. And this is something that you wouldn't get by just increasing the number of LGBTQ people in your organization, or just having a policy that talks about we are all fine with having an LGBT person here. So this is very important, because once LGBTQ people come into this position of decision making capabilities, that's when we see that business actually gains. Business is changing itself. It's not a monolith. And LGBTQ people, queer people actually are part of it as much as anyone else. That's all.
Thanks, Anubhuti. Pankajam, before I come to you, and we're going to take audience Q questions in about 4 minutes, but Anubhuti, can you quickly tell everyone who is watching about the Trans Day of Remembrance that happened yesterday, and why it's important? You can just, if you can tell everyone about that.
Absolutely. So the Trans Day of Remembrance is a very momentous occasion, not for happy reasons, and that's why it's called the Trans Day of Remembrance. It is a day that trans people, as well as allies around the world, make themselves known of all the violence that has happened against trans people. Trans people of color, especially trans women or trans femme people of color, by femme I mean who present as feminine, have been the target of victimization, have been the target of a lot of violence in a lot of countries. It is probably the one identity that stands out, if I was to say statistically, much above any other identity that has faced violence to that level. And this is why we celebrate this day, to remind ourselves that this is happening and you're not looking at it. The authorities are not looking at it. If I can just take a detour, there is that last year, about the same time, the trans bill or act, as it is called, was passed by the government. There is one clause in it which basically says that for abuse against a trans person, any trans person, someone can get a jail for as minimum as 6 months. That's like, and if you compare it to sexual abuse against a woman, which is the minimum punishment is 6 years. So you're basically getting a 90% discount for sexually abusing a trans person. So these realities is something that we have to be aware of, and we have to know that exist in our society. Maybe our governments do not understand that. Maybe our governments are trying to make sure that trans people are considered lesser than everyone else. But then this is a fight that we definitely need to continue. And Trans Day of Remembrance, it's just a date, but any dates like this, like my birthday is a day I feel special. Similarly, Trans Day of Remembrance is a day that I remember that all the violence that has happened and all the sacrifices that make sure that we are here, we are having a discussion on queer rights, because queer rights have been led by trans people for right from the start. Whether you call it in India, or somewhere in the West, trans people have been at the forefront of all what we hold now as our rights. So that's what it's all about. That's what we celebrate on TDOR.
Thanks. Before Meher starts the audience questions, Pankajam, I want you to share your thoughts about, what do we need to do now, to take inclusion to the next level at this point in our time?
Yeah, so any organization is a replication of the community that we live in, So in the community that we live in, we have males, females, we have persons with disability, we have LGBTIQ. That's the community. And therefore, the organization, again, I'm saying it's not a favor. We need to replicate the community. It's very easily said. I agree with Anubhuti that we need leaders who are in this community and leaders of LGBTI persons, so that we can change the way the majority in an organization thinks. But I think, if we want to really help, LGBTI persons to succeed in an organization, we have to give them a level playing field. What I mean by that is, from the start of recruitment, the organization has to think how we will help people whom others think are different. How do we help them? What do they need to succeed? I think from recruitment to onboarding to them continuing in the organization, we have to make sure that we give them segregated treatment. I'm not talking of reservation. I think we cannot give reservation because I'm sure that nobody likes it. But segregation is a must, because when you're a minority, when there's a group that is a minority, there is a lot of sensitization needed so that the team or any one of the team members is not discriminated. And I think that sensitization is not a one-time affair. It has to be continually there in the organization till we become very familiar with the community being within our organization. So it's a journey. I don't believe that a KPI or a board director giving an instruction will help. I think it is the passion of the allies, and those allies being in organizations and pulling along other people to become allies. Then it becomes a movement. I think that groundswell is needed in organizations to help LGBTIQ persons to get the same privileges that any other person would get. I don't think that we have the right to discriminate anybody in this universe. Thank you.
Thank you, Pankajam. And for all those watching, a lot of these case studies are in the book as well. So you can read the book and learn about how so many successful companies in India have been doing a lot of the things that we've been talking about, including, Anubhuti and their journey at Tata Steel, but so many others as well. So Meher, I know you have questions for us. Over to you to ask the questions. Yeah, Meher, do you want to ask the questions? Yeah.
Yes, Parmesh, we have had I can say a storm of questions. We have a huge bunch of questions for the panelists. So let's try and take as many as possible within the short time that we have. Our first question is from Som. It says, from your own experiences, how much of a role can the home environment, parents, partners, family play in helping young people to feel empowered about their own LGBTQ identity in a way that impacts their presence at the workplace?
Anubhuti, maybe, do you want to take that?
Do you want me to take?
Or both, yeah, Pankajam.
No, let her go. So I think it plays a very important, sorry, go ahead, Anubhuti, sorry.
I have just one, sort of a serendipitous example that I have. This morning, I saw a very beautifully made video which talks about a trans man who, due to the COVID-19 scenario, had to go back to their, place of origin, to their place of home, because they don't have a job anymore because of COVID-19. And the difficulties that they face now, staying with parents who are not accepting, really brought out, really touched me in a way that I couldn't understand. I myself stay with my parents. My parents have been a very large part of my journey. I did not know if they will be a part of my journey. There have been times when there have been, a little bit of dilly-dally, but right now we are, as strong a unit as ever. And I think I'm pretty sure that my relationships with my parents, with my family, has increased a lot more before I transitioned. But Pankajam, please go ahead now.
Yeah, I think, I have parents do need support from allies. So it's like how the bosses need support, the parents need support, because there is societal pressure to say that your children are doing something wrong. And we always want our children to do right things. So I remember one of my colleagues, she looked very dull, and after the meeting I asked her, hey, why are you looking dull? And she said, Pankajam, I'm going through tremendous pressure. And I'm like, what happened? I thought that one of her children is into drug or something. See, drug abuse is really very hard to get our children out. And she said, you know what, my son came and said that he is a transgender person. I'm like, what's wrong in that? That one line that I asked, I said, you must accept him as a her. You accept him as a her. The entire society will accept him as a her. That's all. It lies with you. But I could see that just because I was an ally to my friend, so quickly, in 2 minutes time, her face brightened up, and she said, yes, I think, I don't want to be a victim of that. I want to support my son. So I think parents need allies. There is no doubt about it. Parents need allies. And we have to support not only the office that we work in, but we have to support our friends and our relatives. And we have to be very open about it, that there is absolutely no wrong in your children living their dream. How does it matter? It does not matter at all. So they need allies.
Thank you so much for those inspiring words, Pankajam. Our next question is from Ria. She asks, which companies in India have been at the forefront of diversity?
So that I'm going to quickly answer by saying, read the book. There are so many. There are lots. There are lots. And what's interesting, Ria, is that it's big companies as well as small. It's companies all over the country. It's organizations like FICCI, CII, All India Management Association, Society for Human Resource Management, Great Place to Work. So many. What has happened over the past decade is incredible. So a lot of organizations, companies big and small, governments, so many progressive governments, Kerala, Chhattisgarh, Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra, and so many more are all on this journey as well. So just read up about it. You'll feel very inspired, but don't stop at that, right? As Pankajam and Anubhuti have told you today, you need to join us on this journey as well. So yeah.
As a follow-up to that, Parmesh, Ayush asks, do corporations have a code of conduct to protect LGBTQ people from harassment in the organization?
Yeah, Pankajam, Anubhuti, do you all want to talk about your organizational code maybe?
Yes, so I must tell you that, we are developing our policies and, procedures to support LGBTIQ persons, because all these policies and procedures are unfortunately written for male and female, and mostly male, I must tell you. Only maternity policy is written for female. So we are looking at that change, and really speaking, we want LGBTI persons to help us to frame that, to frame the rules and regulations that will help you to have a very good, smooth working in the organization and showcase your strength. So that's what I'm looking at. So I'm now working, I left one organization, I'm working in a new organization. So that's where we are trying to get first a set of persons who can help us with what you want, But whatever is generic in terms of, the requirement of LGBTI persons, we are building it in our policies. For example, even in an insurance policy, it says spouse or partner. It doesn't talk about a male partner or a female partner. So we just changed that recently. So there's lots that needs to be done. But I'm telling you that leaders are very, very conscious, and we are working out what you need to be independent and to be flying around in the organization.
Yes, I would like to cover something. So if I say policy-wise, what we've done, as I talked about a policy that we had brought about last year, that very clearly mentions that sexual harassment cases and discrimination policies have been made gender neutral. By discrimination, I mean the parts that's related to gender have been made gender neutral. So it's not, it doesn't mention male, female or anything like that. Just a person in a position of power and a person not so much in a position of power. Now that is something that we have created within us, but then we don't think that is enough. We think that something Pankajam said is that we have to make sure that the discrimination happens at a level where people really have an impact, or can see it on a daily basis. So a very good practice that we have is we have a honeymoon policy for LGBTQ couples, in which they can go for so a honeymoon policy for LGBTQ couples, they can go for 10 days covered by the company in anywhere in India, some in South Africa, in Europe. So at 5-star hotels, they can have a wonderful time there. And most importantly, since it is going through Tata Steel, we expect that all the property owners would make sure that they face no harassment, they face no questions like spouse, do you need a spouse, or some, do you need a heterosexual spouse, something like that. So we're very proud of this, and we hope that a lot of other organizations can cover that, or if not, then they can join us and have that honeymoon that they've always been looking forward to.
That is fantastic. That's absolutely terrific. It's so heartening to hear that. I'll try and club two questions into one. The question from Sia is, how can media help change the narrative for LGBTQ people? And as a follow-up to that, the question is, do films like Shubh Mangal Savdhan help the cause?
Maybe I should take this because I've written
Sure.
about it. But yeah, I think media has been a great champion and a great ally over the years. Media can help in multiple ways. Media can help in covering a range of stories about us. So far, the media, tends to cover us when some verdict happens or when some violence happens, for example. But media can do a range of stories about, the multiple joys that we also have in our lives as queer people. There are multiple sides to us as queer people. And I think the media needs to look at all these sides, right? And for example, we spoke about families earlier. In India, there are queer people who are accepted by their families, who have workplaces that support them, who are, whether the law, at this point permits it or not, have got committed to each other in various ceremonies, who are living happy, content, fulfilled lives.
Right.
And I think a good way that the media can help, and can change narratives about queer people is by focusing on all of it. I'm not saying that violence doesn't happen. It's horrible. And a lot of violence happens to queer people.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that if you look at the numbers are also very, very shocking, which is why we're doing all the work we're doing, right? Just to give you one. 92% of trans people who can and are willing to work are not given employment in this country, right? We need to change these numbers as well.
Yes.
So I think the media can do a range of things, can focus on the issues, can focus on a spectrum of issues. And to answer very quickly about the films, yes, I think films like Shubh Mangal, Ek Ladki Ko Dekha, there are so many films out there, make a huge difference because they enable you to have these conversations at home. Not just films, web series, not just in English or Hindi, but in a range of languages, whether it's Muthan, there's so many other web series which have come up as well, can make a big difference. Of course, we're talking about films that have, good intentions. Films like Lakshmi Bomb and all, as we've realized in the past, are deeply problematic and, only do a disservice. But we're seeing a lot more good work coming out, right? And Anubhuti, Pankajam, do you want to add to this?
No, I think that word narrative is very critical. We have to change the narrative because it's always narrative that changes behavior. So media has a big role. Not only media, every one of us who is listening to this conversation has a role to play to change the narratives. And nobody is less. We want everyone to speak and understand, through Parmesh's book and by conversations with each other to change the narrative. And media can do a lot. And all of us can do a lot. And we must do a lot.
Absolutely.
If I can
go ahead, Anubhuti.
Just a minute. Let me put it this way. In my opinion, India is a queer country. India has been in a closet for a very long time, trying to pass off as straight to the world outside, trying to deny all the queerness that it holds within itself. It's trying, it's trying to enforce the masculinity or the toxic masculinity into the whole culture. But what I have seen and this is a reflection that is also available in the media because, somehow the lines have been blurred between all the, 4 estates that we have. But what I see changing democratically, and this is, I don't mean by the voting democratically, but a lot of a tech democracy, I see that there are people who are finally comfortable about themselves, who are confident about themselves. And they are the ones who are going to bring change. They are the ones who are going to, take part in media. They're the ones who are going to take, changes in media. And finally, we need to have that perspective of LGBTQ people there. And then I am a very staunch believer that media can be a very strong, ally. But then the stories need to be ones which actually resonate with queer people rather than an idea of queer people that straight people have. So that's my point that I wanted to make.
Thank you so much, Anubhuti. Very quickly, Parmesh, if you would, I'll hand over the floor to you for closing remarks from the panelists and from yourself.
Thank you so much. I think we're out of time, so I just want to say thanks to Anubhuti, Pankajam, Meher, the entire Tata Lit Life team. For anyone interested, look up, read up, stand up for queer people, speak up for queer people. As I said earlier, when you support queer rights, think of it as a conversation in which you are taking part and intersecting this support with so many others, right? So think of how your support for queer rights intersects with that, with the anti-caste movement, with other movements across the world, whether it's Black Lives Matter, the environment movement, etc. Because what we are all trying to do is to imagine and create and co-create a more inclusive world together. So I hope our conversation has stimulated you in some bit towards imagining, but I also hope that you now join us in co-creating this world together, because we really need, post-COVID, we have to create a much better normal. So thanks to all of you, and lots of love, and hope to see you on a physical Tata Lit Live stage next year.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Absolutely, so true, Parmesh, that we're all really craving the new normal. And thank you so much for that hugely inspiring and uplifting talk. It's been so wonderful. You can also make it a point to share it with your friends and to anybody that you'd like to share this talk with. It will be available on YouTube for the next 72 hours. So please make it a point to go out there to spread the word and share this video and share this talk to as many people as you can. Huge thank you to Anubhuti, to Pankajam, and to our chair Parmesh, and to all of you out there. Literature Festival is only as successful as its audiences, and you all have been a fantastic one with having all those questions pouring in. Of course, we ran out of time, sorry about that, but thank you so much for being a part of this session. And our next session here in 15 minutes is something that we spoke about in this session. It's called Speaking My Mind, Why is Mental Health So Difficult to Talk About? And at 6:30 this evening, live from Landor in Missouri, do join us for the special presentation of the Tata Literature Live 2020 Lifetime Achievement Award to Ruskin Bond, followed by a conversation with Vishal Bharadwaj. So do join us for that, since both Mr. Bharadwaj and Mr. Bond will be in the same room together. So that's quite an achievement in these crazy times. You can buy the books that we spoke about in the session today from our bookstore partner Tata Click. Our festival social media handle is @TataLitLive, and our website is tatalitlive.in. A huge thank you to our title sponsors Tata. This session was presented by Kotak. Thank you so much for being here and for being our allies and for being our support. Stay tuned to Tata Literature Live 2020. Stay safe and see you soon online.